the king is getting enthroned on the throne, a girl, a virgin from my tribe would be taken, and he would just sleep with that girl to release all the spirits in the girl. And the name of that girl was Naku. Naku means what? Grief. And we name it in our, you go and they give you such a name. Now, that girl would be taken into the shrine, Kasuri tombs, and she would stay there without getting married again. Believe me, this was not only in Buganda. I think it started, even look at this. This is a system that is it must have been in kingdoms. It must have been brought down by these empires and these emperors and whatever, these kings. So he would remain there permanently. We were told when we went to visit, we would go for, these tours in the tombs, and there are some women who've been there for years, 30, 40 years. When you get married to one of those kings, after his death, you are not supposed to see any other man. And the spirits come for you in the house and lift you into the shrines. They were giving testimony that some of them came, like flying into there, and they could not get out. And they depended on well-wishers who brought them food and what. They would not move, and you would die in that place, just because you had an affair with the king. God have mercy. So even here, they will not be permitted to go into the world anymore and marry after consulting with the king. And so when we see here that Esther required nothing as well, he didn't ask for anything. Others asked for many things, but Esther did not require anything because of her modesty, and because he did not care to be chosen queen or not. She was not there to gain, like people would love to be taken over and married. She didn't want even what was going on, but she had to go because she was forcefully taken there. So we see here that Esther went in in the 7th year. That means, remember, they made the feast in the 3rd year, so she must have gone in after 4 years after Vashti was thrown out. Let us go down as well and add a little bit more.
Now, when each maiden's son was born, have I read that? Now, when the time came for Esther, daughter of Abihail, uncle of Mordecai, who had adopted her as his daughter, to come to the king, she requested nothing except which Haggai, the king's chamberlain guardian of the women, had advised. Esther would find favor in the eyes of all who saw her. Esther was taken to King Ahasuerus into his royal palace in the 10th month, which is the month of Tevis, in the 7th year of his reign. The king loved Esther more than all the women, and she found more favor and kindness before him than all the other maidens, so that he set the royal crown upon her head and made her queen in place of Vashti. Then the king made a great banquet for all his officers and his servants. It was Esther's banquet, and he proclaimed an amnesty for the provinces and gave gifts worthy of the king's hand.
So here we see favor coming on Esther, to the point that she was crowned straight away. That was unusual, because most times they would bring in, this is what the Talmuds are saying, they would bring in virgins and they would send you into that other house, and then the king will call them back, sometimes or the other. And then we see that when Esther went in, she got favor and was not just used, but was crowned king. And when we see here down Easter's feast, it was recalled all the time. It was called the Easter's feast, to remember how she managed to win the heart of the king so quickly. And so that the feast was named after her. And when we see that they released, here we see that the king released people after verse 18, we see that he made a release to the provinces. Have you seen that? And the gifts. That release is, when kings were excited or happy, they would release somebody. They would release something like amnesty. They would release some prisoners. This happened also when Yeshua was going to be killed, remember? And so he says every year we give you somebody. So is it Barabbas or Yeshua? And they asked for the thief, the murderer. But it was all planned that it had to happen. So in this place also, when Esther was crowned queen, some people were released out of prison. Let us continue now. 19.
And when the maidens were gathered together the second time, and Mordecai sat at the king's gate.
So why were the maidens, gathered the second time if they had already got the queen? Why were more virgins being gathered together the second time? This is one of the phrases in the book which really is difficult to understand, but the Talmud say that according to the rabbinic interpretation, its purpose was to arouse Esther's jealousy and thereby induce her to declare her kindred or origin. That's what they thought, that Satan was making a scheme again. And some have suggested that these were the maidens who arrived late from the distant provinces and empires. There were 127 provinces. I told you the empire went down to Ethiopia and as far as India. They couldn't have gathered all the virgins and brought them. And you remember Esther was in Susa already. So they must have maybe they started with the virgins in Susa. And so they were bringing in more phases of virgins as time went along. So that's why we see maybe the second time of virgins here. And so others say that the king, even though he loved Esther, retained his desire for fresh women, and they were gathered all over the empire, and many other explanations have come up. But we see that after some time, when this second harvest came in of virgins, the king forgot about Esther for some time. And that's why he could not go to the king. You remember when Mordecai said you have to. And we know that you could not go to the king unless you were what? You were called by the king. So maybe when these virgins came in, he forgot about the queen and was enjoying himself. So we see that now the Lord is bringing in some provision. As I said, sometimes you go through a patch of hardship, but the Lord is preparing something big. And if you are anxious and you are not, you don't wait upon the Lord, you may lose it. Sometimes it comes through a test, then a testimony comes, and so we should learn not to be impatient, but wait upon the Lord, even though we're going through a bad patch. So here we see that even though this happened, something was coming up now. And what happened then, as we're going to conclude, what happened after that?
Esther still told nothing of her kindred